and get these businesses to look like fully functioning things and get their big boy pants on and make sure that they look like grown-up businesses, not startups up a fire escape. Amortization, a bit of a difficult one to say that. So everybody, what I wanted to talk to you about now is one of the first acquisitions that we made since I actually left and started out on my own. So in 2022, we were presented with an opportunity to buy another managing agent, so a block management company. The company itself was not really making money. It was perhaps losing a little bit of money because it's quite difficult staffing, and it's a business that really relies on a numbers game. When you're quite small, it's a lifestyle business for one or two people maybe, but to get it to a bigger operation, you need to grow it. So having looked at all the numbers and the figures, we agreed a price and the rest of it, and we looked at then how I could actually make that business profitable and actually expand it and utilise it into our existing revenue streams, really. So one of the things I wanted to show you was where the office actually first was. So they actually rented two offices here at this site, and the access to them is particularly awkward, and it doesn't really lend itself to like a good customer experience. You have to come down this kind of Twitton Avenue here, which is extremely difficult. There's no parking around here. Parking out there is quite hard. Obviously, there's a benefit in actually having an office and an office address. So a lot of people won't come to your office anyway if you run that style of business. So to some degree, these features do or don't matter. But as the business grows, it's really hard to upscale into those sort of, or get away from those issues, because you'll have more clients coming, contractors and the rest of it. There's also a fairly large dog parlour type thing, which you'll hear now. And so obviously from an office environment, that can be quite disruptive, especially for the staff and so on, when they're trying to be on the phone or whatever it might be. So one of the things that also was awkward is access as well. So you can have a quick see here. This particular site was accessed via this flight of steps here. So as you can see, one of the other things that you need to consider when you're perhaps moving out of a home office or you're looking at purchasing a business or whatever is about the upscaling of it. Here, this access, although it's up a fire escape, it doesn't look particularly inviting to your customer, so that's something that you might want to consider. But also if you've got those elderly people, and also from a staffing point of view, you know, you're going down a flight of steps, trip hazard, getting your furniture in there, office chairs, all that sort of stuff. There are factors that you need to take into account when looking at the serviced offices. So one of the things that we looked at here on the early days when we were looking at the business valuation is where do we need to get the business to, or what do we need to do with it in order to kind of move out of this centre and get away from it. We didn't actually have an office in Eastbourne at the start, so we decided to carry on with this and see how it worked and see what kind of visitors we had and the rest of it, and that allowed us to actually better monitor whether or not it was worth actually opening a shop here and having a full office with a nice presence and moving away from this kind of serviced office arrangement where you go up a fire escape and so on. So we're trying to get the firm to amalgamate it all and acquire it and merge it into our existing operations, but also expanding into Eastbourne and get these businesses to look like fully functioning things and get their big boy pants on and make sure that they look like grown-up businesses, not startups up a fire escape. So this Sainsbury's here, that was part of the original portfolio for Cable Rock, and I just thought it was important to note that it's literally bang opposite where that little office was. So even though the fact that that was awkward and difficult to get to, you can see how people like to make their own personal journey really easy. So the developer came along, they did all of this, and they had obviously looked for managing agents, and where better to get the one that's nearest to the building, because people even in this industry nowadays, despite all the technology, still want a personal touch from people, and they want to know that you're going to be able to get out to their problem, their building, whatever you're managing, whatever industry you are. are, they still like that personal feel. And it's amazing how they then went straight to the person that was nearest to it, even though they may not have been the most established or biggest agent. So I thought that one was quite an interesting one, because I don't think it even came across our radar, bearing in mind that we're fairly, as a main company, our holding group, we're quite a lot larger than the company that we acquired, Cable Rock. But yeah, they've literally built it and then gone next door. So there's something to be said for location and making sure that you can be found on Google and all the various algorithms as well. So we'll go on to the next site. One of the things that we did when we purchased Cable Rock was I realised that we didn't really have much of a presence in the kind of Eastbourne area. We were very much kind of in between Eastbourne and Brighton, so obviously we looked at taking those offices on, which was a strategic move for us. But one of the other things was that I'm not particularly well known, or wasn't well known, within the community of Eastbourne. So what we decided to do was to join up to some networking things, and I know each one's got its nuances and the way they like to behave, but we chose to actually join BNI, which is one of the larger networking groups. It's not for everybody, but I quite like it. I like the regimentness of it and so on. And that is just basically here at this building in Eastbourne, which is in the kind of harbour. But yeah, that was where the BNI is in that particular bit. But the important takeaway is that that's again a strategic move, that when we were purchasing this business, we needed to think about how we were going to maintain and sustain the ability, because we're an outside company buying in. What are we actually offering? You know, are we just a big firm that's just wiped out some local competitor or local business or whatever, and now it's part of a group? I really wanted to try and make sure people are aware that we do care and we are involved, and they can see and smell and touch and feel me or whatever. You know, I'm a real person, not just someone sat behind a corner desk in London looking out on a nice view. So this building behind us is actually a good example of a kind of marketable client, if you like, from a business point of view. So this is one of the more prominent buildings in Eastbourne. We were asked to tender for it, and in compiling the tender, obviously I didn't want to shoot ourselves in the foot, but I realised how marketable the building would be for us in the future. It's a very prominent building. It's not our largest building that we manage in terms of numbers and volume, but it is a very distinct building where you can say you're involved with it, people see it and hear it and the rest of it. So it's a building that people know. So if you were running, say, I don't know, some sort of branded business, and you were saying, I do work with XYZ, and everybody has heard of it, it might not be the biggest customer you've got, but actually people hang on to that and they realise what that customer means. So like, I was dealing with someone the other day who does these mezzanine floors inside a warehouse. So you buy a warehouse and you want to put an extra floor, they provide the floors. We'll put a link in the description for them. They're called Spartan. But basically, when I looked through their list of customers, the ones I recognised, I thought, I recognise those ones. So Halfords was on there. So in the UK, I've talked about Halfords before and their kind of bike department and the rest of it. And they were a company that they supply. But for their point of view, they're marketing that to me, because I'm like, I recognise that, I like that, I can see that, I can even go into a Halford store and have a look at a mezzanine. So again, that's a good example of marketing stuff. And this building here has led us, is a very easy building for us to identify when you say we look after XYZ. And it's allowed us to really market that to other clients and leverage our brand off of it, essentially. Obviously, you don't want to do too much of that, because you might be reliant upon one customer, and then if you don't do business with them anymore, then it's obviously hard to leverage that. But you know, you should also factor that in when you're tendering for jobs as to what else can they bring to you. So this particular building is not necessarily our biggest customer from a monetary volume sense, or from all of the extras that we bolt onto it and the rest of it, and other departments within Charles Cox and the business. we've got other clients that are much bigger. They provide our surveying department, they might provide our development or our lettings business, that sort of thing. So when tendering a job, it's important to understand where that customer fits, even if you're going to leverage their marketing. So it's multi-asseted in terms of where they sit. So we're just coming up to a building that we manage, actually, and it's not necessarily that we manage it that is important, but from a marketing point of view, although we're coming to the end of this particular project, we have had our advertising banners up on it, and we were able to negotiate that with the client and talk to them about it. But this building here, for months on end, we had like a big Charles Cox banner on the outside, and again, it's a free source of advertising. It does serve a purpose because the client and any contractors, building regulations, any governing bodies that come along can see who's managing the project quite easily. But actually, from our point of view, this is a prominent area right on the seafront where thousands of people are coming. Eastbourne has a big air show as well, so lots of people would have seen the banner. So I'm a real strong believer of just making sure that every single opportunity you've got to kind of flaunt your banner without kind of rubbing it in people's faces, so to speak, or your company logos, you should try and do that. You'll see in pretty much all the videos that we do, I'll be wearing some sort of Charles Cox or We Group type top or something like that. And then even just down to the fact that it's very useful for the fire brigade and various officers to come, but you'll see at most of our buildings we have like a little plaque that says that we manage the building, and again, that's an advertising sign for us as much as it is information for residents and for various bodies. So again, another touch point essentially. Obviously the scaffolding where we've got our advertising banners up, or did have that. This particular project was a little painful because the contractor let us down a little bit on things, but and I think one of the big sort of takeaways from it, apart from the fact that it was good from a marketing point of view, and it's really nice to refurbish buildings, give them that lease of life, and you can talk about them. Again, it's another prominent client, if you like. We're talking buildings here, but you could have like a real key marketable client. This building I can direct people to, they can see it. We took before and after photos, nice tangible things to hold on to. But the fact the contractor, who's out of our control realistically, but the fact the contractor let us down quite a lot did have some effects, because the scaffold up was for a fairly long time. Although Eastbourne's a big town, people do talk to each other. So it was noted that the project wasn't going as swimmingly as it should have done, and that did come to us because we went to quote for some other jobs and people mentioned it because people talk to one another. So you always have to be wary that even those outside contractors and forces can actually have a negative impact on you, and they are only as good as the people that you use around you. So you need good, solid, dependable people, otherwise they can actually have a negative effect on you if you're not careful. So this site here, which is Pacific Heights, is actually one of our larger sites, but what I thought was really good with this particular one is it got us involved in the harbour in Eastbourne, which is an area of Eastbourne, for those who don't know, that has a fair amount of flats in it, and it's slightly separated out from the main town. So it's an area that we've always wanted to kind of target. We've had sort of dabbles in it and things like that. But from a kind of business perspective view, by using that South Cliff Tower that I referred to earlier, about how you can kind of almost market your own clients, that actually allowed us to accelerate or add a little bit of extra something to our tendering for this particular building. We're actually up against a local competitor, and then a fairly large company in the southeast, styled Harolds Williams, which people would have heard of, and on the tendering process they were second to us. So it was quite nice to see that our pricing and tendering was alongside what I would regard as probably one of the larger firms in the southeast. we weren't that far off of them, so that was pleasant to know, and I was obviously exposed to that, and it's information that you can utilise when you're tendering. So yeah, one of the main takeaways with this building is that our access to South Cliff Tower and the way that we can market that as well put us on the map a little bit in Eastbourne, because it's quite a prominent building, allowed us to then tender for this. Also our existing network contacts, so this actually, the initial contact for us came through a solicitor that I've used for a number of years. They were acting for them on some debt collection and they wanted recommendations, and obviously good working relationship with them. They know what we're about. We've done lots of debt collection through them. They recommended us, so that fits in well with the networking side of things, and that's not necessarily come from BNI or anything like that. That's come from years of harvesting relationships and sowing them and working on them as well. And a good friend of mine that I do a lot of business with, a real keen advocate of sowing relationships and seeding them and working them, and he calls them farming, because they can take years before they materialize, and those sort of relationships have now resulted in some of really good recommendations. In fact, only earlier this afternoon I was at another building where they got in touch with us through a recommendation from another client or from a contractor or whatever, and then they'd seen all of our marketing stuff, our website and the rest of it, so there was like backups of what they were being told. So yeah, I think that it's really good to try and market yourself, networking, utilize existing clients and any avenue that you can. So as I was saying about being able to kind of market your client, if you like, the particular site we just went round with the white buildings there, Saffrons in Eastbourne, when we were pitching for that business, they wanted some recommendations, some references. So it's important, again, to make sure your client's happy for a start, but also they wanted that because it's a similar sized building. So it's no good just giving like your favourite customers as references. You need to be able to have a nice, good breadth of people to do that with. It's not going to apply to every business, but things like Google reviews and things like that, they're really important nowadays. And then we had this site that's actually next door to the Saffrons, which is Linkswoods, and they also were in talks with us at the same time. So I think it was weird. It felt like it was like a kind of amalgamation of like, oh, let's be with the best agent because they do this building and we want them to manage ours and so on. And maybe that's me over exaggerating the situation a little bit, but it felt very nice because it was accumulation of for some fairly large clients and buildings in Eastbourne. One of our members of staff actually referred to it as like having the monopoly board and having the train stations on it. If you get all the key properties in Eastbourne, and I suppose these ones are actually ones like that they are quite key to Eastbourne. So they probably would appear on the monopoly board if there was such a thing as an Eastbourne version. Maybe we should do that sometime. But the point is that they all talk to each other and they all marketability, which is a good and a bad thing, because to be honest, if we ever got to a point where we fell out with one of them, then they might all talk to each other. So you have to be wary of that as well. So those are like the sort of bigger buildings that I wanted to capture and talk about, really, because I think it's important that you try and learn from those things. And if you're trying to build your business up so you can get those next customers up, remember, it was only probably 18 months or so ago we didn't manage that many buildings that had more than, say, 50 flats in. And in the Eastbourne area, from strategizing and purchasing Cable Rock and looking into how we were going to grow the business, how we were going to actually expand it and neutralize it and make it profitable. Remember, it was sort of losing a bit of money when we first got involved with it. And so we've gone from like kind of that strategy to mapping out exactly how we're going to address things, and then trying to visualize that and see it all the way through. And that has resulted in us actually expanding quite heavily in the Eastbourne area, and we've expanded across the southeast a little bit, but specifically micro in Eastbourne, we've taken on a lot of stuff. It was a combination of some I want to say baby boomer generation business owners selling up at the same time. Some of those transitions didn't go particularly well, so some clients switched around, and we managed to pick up a bunch of them. And some of our other competitors, they either sold up or they moved on or whatever they might have done. So, that in a combination, that is something that we didn't factor in, but all the rest of it, so making sure that we knew that the office that we looked at to start with was a particularly viable thing for us to do, and then figuring out how we were going to get out of that office to really maximise ourselves. The building that we will look at Willingdon, the one where we've actually gone to now, that's been used as a property related business, the premise, for a long period of time, so people know that building particularly well. And then we've been able to upskill and sell on the clients that we have picked up. We've done some really big work in Eastbourne of late, so the buildings that we've looked at today, but not exclusive of that, we've also helped some other clients do some legal processes like enfranchisement and so on, and really expanded that. And now we're really sort of cooking on gas, I suppose, in terms of our business plan, and it was key to stick to that and make sure that we actually got from where we were when we purchased Cable Rock to where we are now. So yeah, I think those sort of journeys of acquisition, expansion and the rest of it really do need to be mapped out, and people need to look into them and make sure that they follow them through, really. Well, I hope you're really enjoying the content. What will really help us get it out to further and wider audiences if you could subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, comment below. We love replying to your comments. Please just let us help us grow this channel. So like, subscribe and comment. Those are the key things that I want you to do to help us grow this channel together.